Welcome to Intelligent Human Leadership, leading yourself and your team. Do you ever find yourself grappling with a lack of confidence in your team? Or battling the relentless waves of concern and fear? Are the pressures to meet client expectations and the burden of missed opportunities weighing you down? On this podcast, you'll discover the strategies and insights that will reignite your team's morale and help you find the harmony and knowledge you seek to propel your business forward. Here, we explore innovative ways to reignite your creative spirit and achieve greatness, empowering you to lead with intelligence, compassion, and resilience. If you're ready to dive deep into your core of leadership challenges and be guided toward success, here's your host, founder of Steward Your Business, David Carr.
Welcome back to the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. I am excited to have you here, and I'm going to jump right out of the gates with a question for you. What are you looking at? What are you looking at? This question came up for me recently this year as I was skiing. And for those of you that hopefully are following me, if you haven't, please do follow along. Steward Your Business, David W. Carr. You can follow those accounts wherever I'm most of them. But nonetheless, I want to get to the point where I was sharing some pictures and what I went through recently skiing. And for those of you that know me, I ski here, and that's one of my passions and my hobbies is snow skiing. And so anyways, I was skiing early one morning, and the visibility was bad, really bad, actually. And for those of you that don't ski, when the visibility is bad, obviously it's hard to see where you're going, but there's also terrain and there's bumps and challenges there. And if you're not paying attention, or ready for them, you can easily get hurt. And so in this case, I ended up ending the day a little bit early because I realized I did not want to injure myself. It wasn't worth it. I recognized that the terrain was going to be challenging and I couldn't see very far. That being said, as a skier, whether you can see far or not, one of the things we're taught when you're first skiing is don't look just at your skis. Don't look what's just right in front of you, meaning looking down. And the reason for that is you'll fall over. You won't be able to get ahead because you're so focused right in the here and now, right? What's right in front of you. And so I posed the question as to what are you looking at? We do need to look at things right in front of us, but we also need to be looking ahead as well. We need to do both of those things. And for me, I was fortunate enough to know my way down the mountain. I've been skiing this location for some time. So I knew I could get down the mountain. I knew the route down. I knew how to adjust. I knew how to pivot and where to look and to also go slower, adjust my speed, adjust how aggressive I was being at that particular time, attacking the slope, if you will. And so I adjusted what I was looking at. Now I couldn't look as far as I wanted to, so that limited my speed and my ability to use, get my technique a little bit more. But nonetheless, I knew I had to shift what I was looking at. And so oftentimes we are looking at the wrong things. And I wanted to encourage you or challenge you really to look at that. Are you looking at the right things? What are you looking at? And I'm going to emphasize business here. Steward your business, stewarding yourself. But this is a foundational component of the program that I run, and I'll talk more about that later in the podcast here. But I've asked some questions in previous episodes, and we'll continue this as we go into 2024 of asking powerful questions and getting clarity as to where are we going, right? So I'll give you some examples and we'll look at some things through our time here today. And we'll start looking at the things outside of ourselves, okay? So when we're looking outwardly, and I'll start again with the business concept here, one of the ones that's really easy to look at, in my opinion, is where there's market trends or consumer client behavior. what's evolving, right? Nothing stays the same. If we just kept looking and saying, oh, it just stays the same, we'll be in trouble, right? And so we need to be cognizant of that. You may have heard of a SWOT analysis: strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, a common strategic planning tool that I've used with clients and myself, and looking at those changes, right? And so if we're not looking at those things, we may be left behind. And I'll give you, an example. I'm a kid of the 80s. I grew up in there. And through the 80s, 90s, and really to the late 90s almost, Blockbuster Video was an amazing company. They just completely took over the market space for video rentals. If you want to go back and look on YouTube or whatnot, you can see people's clips of just going there on a Friday or Saturday night and seeing walls of videos, VHS cassettes, right? And just the how demand they were. Well, we all know there was a market trend to streaming. At first, it was kind of ridiculous. People thought, how is this going to happen? How is this going to work? But obviously, it changed over time, and you had somebody like Netflix come in. And then there's been so many more since then, right? That have adapted to consumer behavior, how people want to take in information, how they want to experience it. And so it was, although Blockbuster tried to switch, it was too late for them. Unfortunately, they had this physical rental model store that they thought would last, and it didn't. And we have a lot of companies that have physical space right now, for example, for their employees to come to work. And we're in this transition place right now where, is that necessary or not? Well, it's not an all or nothing proposition. I think you need to look in your company and your culture, what is relevant, what's most impactful, right? For the way that your team works, the way that, the business functions and needs to. But I will encourage you to look and evaluate. Maybe you're looking at the wrong thing. I have some people saying, well, we just need to come back in the office. Well, to what end? Well, we just need people to have come in the office. Well, maybe you're looking at the wrong thing. Now, there is value in people having coming back in the office. Don't get me wrong. But if it's just, just because we've always done it that way, I'll challenge you to think maybe you're looking at the wrong thing here. Getting feedback from your employees, how they work, how their work-life balance. This is a real challenge right now. And this is something that I help business owners and their teams navigate through. Because again, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution, in my opinion, for most businesses, particularly professional services. So, looking at this, this change and evaluating this, are you looking at the right things? This is a big firm. There's others like Kodak that thought, hey, physical media will always be around. Digital cameras came in, and consumers like that better than having to print out all of their pictures. How many of you get printed pictures anymore? Probably very few. Now, some of you get occasionally, and there's still a market for it, but it's different. And so I want you to consider looking at the right thing. And how do you know you're looking at the right thing? Again, I'm going to get into that a little bit more later in this episode. And so recognizing there's changes in the competitive landscape, are you evaluating that? And continuing in this kind of external understanding, the things outside of ourselves. For those of you in the consulting world, when I talk about architecture, engineering, environmental, construction, right? That whole industry is driven by regulatory changes, and that is ongoing. There's nobody that can say, set it or forget it. I've been a member of the Association for Environmental Professionals. Every year, they come up with a new CEQA handbook, right? There are new guidelines under the federal agencies regarding the Endangered Species Act or the Clean Water Act, things by different administrations, different law review. These things are ever changing. And if you're not paying attention and prepared, that what you were working toward and functioning under could move, and you are left, not with a client or you have a service that no longer has a need anymore. You've been servicing and providing something that it's moved because the regulatory impacts have moved, right? So it's really important that you're looking at these things and evaluating those as could be considered a threat possibly to your business. We all know how technology continues to change and evolve. From these different social media platforms to different tools, from AI, of course. That's why I started, this podcast, called it The Intelligent Human Leadership, because human relationships are still always important and needed, even if there's AI there, right? But AI has changed the game once again, right? Technology and advances. So if we're not paying attention to these things and we're not looking at them, and we're kind of got our gaze off in the distance somewhere, and it's not really getting us where we need to go, we're in danger, true danger of, number one, just having a profitable business, because our profits will go down if we're not being relevant and looking at the right things. Number two, we may not have a business. I mentioned Kodak. I mentioned Blockbuster. Another one would be, for example, Nokia. If you guys again been around like me, I got my first cell phone in the 90s. Nokia was huge, but they didn't adjust and catch up with all the smartphone advances. And even BlackBerry, for example, they had the largest market share at one point of all smartphones. And so you've got to be looking at where things are moving and changing so that you can get there. And how do you do that? How do you evaluate that? Part of my whole program in Steward Your Business and Steward Yourself is really getting an understanding about the facts of where you're at today. What I call the fact map, of just getting clear on that. What is the truth? What is the facts of your life right now? And if you can't understand that, it's very hard to then go and what I call get you to an impossible game. Get you to what is really beyond realistic, beyond radical, but truly impossible. Because those people that are truly moving the needle to impossible are the ones that are shifting, adjusting, pivoting, and they're keeping their eye on what matters most, making the most impact. And so encourage you in that. So I'm gonna flip it a little bit, and I want you to look internally here, or look internal to your business, right? What are you doing to look? Are you looking at the right things? One of the things that's critical to business in what I call forecasting, right? Most of us, everybody has to do, whether you look at it or not, you're looking at a budget, you're looking at cash flow, you're looking, whether this is for personal life or your business, right? So there's some simple things we can look at, obviously, right here and now, like how much do we have in the bank, right? But looking at forecasting is kind of what are we anticipating coming along? And if we're not looking far enough, or we're not looking at the right indicators, right? You may have heard of lead and lag indicators. We want to look at those, ideally more of the leading indicators versus the lagging ones. Lagging ones meaning we're looking behind. We want to be looking forward and looking at the right ones. And if you're not sure what those are, or perhaps you need to reevaluate them, then that's part of why I have Steward Your Business. Let's look at them. I specialize particularly in the AEC industry because I've been working in that for over 25 years. I understand that very well, from labor to project profitability, other things there. So we want to be looking at those things. And if we're not, that's challenging. What's our win rate, right, on proposals? How much are we spending on them? And so that would dovetail into operational efficiency, right? How efficient are our processes, and are we looking at the right ones? Maybe you've created systems or processes based on the exception rather than the rule. That's happened in the past, and so you're kind of like, well, this client always wants it this way, and we're focusing on solving this client, and you're neglecting 90% of your other clients that do it, much more efficiently and consistently. And so you've got a system or a process that is built on a faulty understanding of what you're looking at needs to be reevaluated and analyzed. So looking internally about that, and that could be your own personal life too. How do you start your workday? How do you end your workday? What are you looking at? How are you spending your time? This is so important because every one of these things are additive, and over time, they will help you get either further along, or it's going to get you stuck, and it's not going to get you the results that you really want. I'm passionate about employee engagement and culture. This is my particular area of strength with Steward Your Business, where I go in and help you with organizational health assessments, knowing yourself to lead yourself. Hence, that's the name of the podcast, right? if we're neglecting looking at our culture and looking at how people, our team satisfaction and performance is, we may lose them. And it's very costly to keep hiring new people, training them up. And so if we're not looking at the right things, we may miss the mark. It could be providing professional development, career coaching. There's lots of different things there. And particularly in today's age where a lot of people are working remotely, we may be missing the mark in getting them what they need. Again, this is what I specialize in and help with. So reach out as you're hearing this, because I can help you and your team. And I've seen great success in this area. It's super exciting when I can see companies and owners and leaders in the company, directors, department heads looking and saying, hey, you know what? Something's amiss here. I know there's a miss. I can see it. Maybe there's some things I can refine. And so I want to encourage you in that. Looking at the right things and then having a plan to get there. Of course, if we have an engaged culture, often that leads to innovation and ways we can adapt, right? So I want to encourage you to, again, look at that. Are you looking for ways of continuous improvement or innovation? Or are you saying, hey, no, that's a bother, or, this is good enough? I want to encourage you. Are you asking the question? Are you looking at that? If you're not, again, you may be left behind and your company may not be attracting the talent because they don't see that evolution of the company. They don't see you as evolving as a leader. Are you continuing to evolve and adapt? Because if you are not, they certainly will not likely follow. They'll see that and they're like, well, why do I need to do anything more? And again, you will become irrelevant over time if you choose that way of looking at things. If we're not evaluating those things too, and here's one thing that's important, very, very important with companies and individuals, or what are your values? I was just talking to a friend last night about this. What are your values? How are they guiding you and your vision, your mission? And oftentimes we'll go through an exercise, and I've done this in the past, where we kind of set them and we forget to go back and look at them. We need to be looking at those almost daily, I would say, that you know them so well inside and out, that you love them, you live them. They are who you are. They are who you are, or who are you becoming? This is the organization. This is the values of the organization. Are you looking at those? Do you know them? Do you know what they stand for? So you can see a written word. I may say teamwork. Well, what does that mean to the overall team? Get the meaning behind that. Understand that clearly. It'll help you in your success. It'll help you in your momentum. Looking at the right things. Again, what are you looking at? Are you considering your ethics and your brand reputation and how you show up for your clients? Are you looking at that? Have you evaluated that? Have you gotten feedback on that? Are you looking at, how are you creating sustainability in the business? Do you have backup people? Do you have backup processes? Do you have you assessed that? Are you developing a framework that helps align your goals, and particularly as our society and where we're going? Are we considering that? If we're not looking at these things, we're not considering these things, we may be looking at the wrong things. This is so important. If we are not paying attention to this, we could do deep harm to ourselves, to our environment. If we use just sustainability. So you have oil. We need oil for our cars, right? We need this. This is a service that we need. But then if we're not paying attention, and I'll use the example of an extreme example, right? But you may have heard or seen the movie, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, right? It was one of the worst environmental disasters in U.S. history. Why? Because neglecting environmental sustainability and safety standards in the business operations. They didn't look at that. The company cost them over $65 billion with a B, fines and compensation and cleanup costs. That's just their financial costs. Think about the impacts to our environment, the loss of wildlife, our beaches, our then the toll it took on our natural world and it's still lingering, right? These environmental disasters can go on for decades, right? Because we're not paying attention and we're looking at the wrong things. This is so important. We need to be looking at the right things. How do you get there, right? How do you look at the right things? Well, on this podcast, there's no secrets here. I want to be sharing the tools and the resources I use for myself and that I use with my clients, both companies and individuals. We start with a foundational fact map. I walk you through this process. So it's getting clear where you're at. And I look holistically. I start with business. We look at your body. We look at your relationships and balance. We look at your being, your spiritual walks. Where are you right now? Let's look and get a clear picture of that. Oftentimes, we don't even know that. We can't tell you the facts of our life clearly and succinctly. So while I can't solve all the problems here on the podcast, I can give you a framework to use. And working with me, there's much more detailed tools and analysis. And that's why I bring this podcast to you, just to start to open your mind to what can be and how you can get back on track, how you can look at the right things and get you to what I call your impossible game. What could be in the year from now? What could be, and how are you evolving in that? How are you becoming in that way? And we go, and then once we do that, we reverse engineer. We say, okay, here's where I want to go. And how I'm going to get there? Well, the how can change. The how can, and I don't. Some people get stuck on the exact how. We don't always know how, candidly, but we're going to know. We're going to get there step by step, one bite at a time, one step in front of the other. Right. So we're looking at breaking that down, and what I do is call a monthly mission, where I can look at the month and look at your whole year and your impossible game, and I break that down to weekly fires, and then I, in my own coaching program, review every week. Am I on target? Am I off target? Am I making the mission? Did I win the week or did I not win the week? Right? And we can look at those actions. And again, I can't break it all down here for you, but there's individual steps we can look at each of those domains, and we can make sure that you're hitting them. Are you making the strides that make the most impact? And are you letting go of the things that aren't, right? Are we hitting those things that are important? Not just urgent, right? Or not just urgent and important. We want to make sure that we're making progress on those things. And oftentimes we're not. It's much easier to look at the things that are urgent. And oftentimes those are clouded. They may be urgent and important, but sometimes urgency can mask itself. And it really isn't that important. But it's urgent because somebody else has it, or you've got it in your mind, or there's a story there. We can break down those stories using tools like the Stack in the Warrior app that I use, in the Giant tool set. These are resources that I provide and curate for you in the Steward Yourself program. But this idea of what are you looking at is so key, and I want you to consider that. What are you looking at in your business? What are you looking at in your relationships? What are you looking at in your body? What are you looking at in your spiritual walk? The more you can ask this question and evaluate it and give yourself a clear answer without BS, without lying to yourself, stripping away all the niceties, and you just got to be real, raw, and get relevant as to where you're at. Right? This is the framework that I use every day, every week, every month. I go through it every year. I continue to refine what I'm looking at. If this is resonating with you and you're realizing, David, I'm not there. I haven't done that in a while. I feel stuck. I feel like I keep doing these things and it's not making a difference. That's where I ask you to reach out. This is a place here through the Intelligent Human Leadership that I've created for you as a resource to know number one, you're not alone. Number two, you have an advocate and somebody else that's been there along your own journey, maybe a little further ahead of you, that can point you and get you on track, that help you look at the right things. If this episode is resonating with you, or if you've listened to the previous episodes, I encourage you to go back to them. We're going to continue to share throughout this year. We've got so many more every week coming to you. Please share, please like, please leave a comment on whatever your favorite platform is. Your reviews really help me get this message out to others. It's you, the listener, that's taken the time and invested in yourself. Number one, you're the hero here. You've invested in yourself. You're taking this, you're learning from somebody that's gone before you and applying it to your life. You're going to be so much better, and you'll have this reverberating effect around those that are around you. And I could tell you from firsthand experience, it's amazing to be able to be in that place, that you lead from what you live. So I am thankful for you listening to me again this week. We'll be coming back to you again following week and the week after that. So my commitment to you, it is an honor to be with you. Thank you again for joining me on the Intelligent Human Leadership podcast. I'm David Carr, your host, and I look forward to being back with you again next week. Until then, take care and have a great day.